Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. It's a little after 3 o'clock on the East Coast of the United States. We are expecting a snowstorm tonight in northwestern New Jersey. When I got up this morning, it was 20 degrees. I know this is not a weather forecast, but just so you understand the way I live. I got up this morning to walk the dog, to walk Chris. It was 20 degrees. Yes, last Tuesday at that time, it was 75 degrees. So we again experienced the phenomenon here of no fall, no autumn. We seem to go right from summer weather to winter. About 65 or 70 miles east of me in Brooklyn, New York, in the courtroom where Federal District Court Judge Raymond Dearie sits. Remember that name? Judge Dearie, longtime friend of mine. Judge Dearie is the special master appointed in the case known as Donald Trump versus the United States of America, in which former President Trump sued the Department of Justice, asking for the appointment of a special master, and then asked the special master to block the DOJ from using many of the documents that it had seized. Okay, so that's been bubbling beneath the surface, and I'm going to explain to you what's happened in a minute. But I have to preface this by saying we are watching what's happening in Ukraine. We realize that Colonel Douglas Macgregor and Scott Ritter are of enormous interest to many of you. The Colonel and Scott will be with us later this week. That both will be on. And of course, we'll give you a full report as to what's happening. As we speak, Russian missiles are attacking residential areas. It's a war crime. Residential areas of Kyiv. The same missiles are also continuing to bombard infrastructure, roads, highways, public utilities, to deny the residents of Kyiv heat, electricity, and hot water. We're watching it, and of course, we'll talk to you about it, particularly the diplomatic and political interplay as well as the military. Okay, now back to the former president and the special master. Sometimes lawyers get in arguments over things that are just not worth it. I can remember many times when I was on the bench, I'm thinking to myself, now why am I resolving this dispute? It really has nothing to do with the case between this plaintiff and this defendant. That's what the issues before the special master are, and here's why. The key documents that the feds wanted when they persuaded another federal judge, one in Florida, to sign a search warrant for former President Trump's home. The key documents they wanted were the ones that pertain to national defense information, commonly referred to by their initials, NDI. The government has NDI. The trial judge who initially ruled on the case, Judge Aileen Connor, ruled that the feds could not examine, could not share with the intelligence community, and could not use before the grand jury the NDI documents. That ruling was overruled by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court decided not to get involved. So the feds have all the NDI, all the documents that at one point were classified that the former president says he declassified, whether he had the authority to do it or not. All those documents the feds have, they are examining them. They've had intelligence experts examine them, and they are presumably presenting them before a grand jury. They are not before Judge Dearie. What is before Judge Dearie are the remaining 22,000 pages of documents that the feds seized from Trump. Trump filed an application with Judge Dearie saying that the documents are personal and belong to him. It's clear that they're not. Personal documents are defined in federal law as those which have nothing to do with the individual's job. Then Trump says, well, if they're not personal, they're executive privilege. Okay, they can't be both. There's a principle of philosophy. A thing cannot both be and not be at the same time and in the same respect. You're either alive or dead. You can't be alive and dead at the same time and in the same respect. Personal documents and executive privilege documents are the opposite. Personal documents are those, like, say, his passport, which have nothing whatsoever to do with his job as president. Executive privilege documents are those which are privileged from revelation to the judicial or legislative branches, so that there'd be free communication between the president and his advisors. So if they're executive privilege, they're not personal. And if they're personal, they're not executive privilege. Why he's making this argument is because he likes to make arguments, because he likes to engage judges, because he likes to use litigation as a tool to delay the inevitable. The inevitable, in my opinion, is his indictment. I don't think his delaying will work, because he's not going to be indicted on the basis of these non-NDI documents. He's only going to be indicted on the basis of documents that were criminal for him to possess, and that's the NDI ones, which are not before Judge Dearie and which the feds already have. The documents before Judge Dearie is deciding whether the feds can examine them and use them in the prosecution of the former president. So that's where we are. It almost doesn't matter which way Judge Dearie rules on this. If I were him, I would rule in favor of the DOJ, because the president's arguments are nonsensical. Under the law, these documents, if they're personal, they can't be executive privilege. If they're executive privilege, they can't be personal. And executive privilege does not protect you from other parts of the executive branch, of which the DOJ is one. It only protects you from compelled revelation to the Congress or to the courts. So I think Trump will lose this argument, but it is being made even as we speak. The former president is going to announce within a few hours, I believe, that he is about to seek the Republican nomination for president. His advisors are advising him not to make this announcement until after the runoff between Senator Warnock and his opponent, Herschel Walker, in Georgia, because the president, the former president, and his bombast have proven to be unpopular with the electorate this time around. It worked in 2016. It didn't work in 2020 or 2021. And we know it didn't work in 2022. President Trump is apparently going to make the announcement anyway. He also seems to think it will be more difficult for the grand jury in Fulton County, Georgia, investigating the fake electors scheme to indict him if he's a presidential candidate. And it will be more difficult for a grand jury in Florida or Washington, a federal grand jury, to indict him. I think he and his lawyers are mistaken there. The fact that he's running for president will not mean anything to these grand juries. You want to watch what a jury is doing. Watch the jury in state court in Lower Manhattan, where the Trump organization is a defendant. That's the president's holding company in a criminal case alleging tax fraud. And as I speak, Alan Weisselberg is speaking. There's a familiar name. Mr. Weisselberg has worked for the Trump organization for 40 years, the last 20 years as its chief financial officer. He's pleaded guilty to tax fraud by receiving benefits personally signed by Donald Trump and not paying taxes on them. He will be testifying for the government that the Trump organization has been a criminal enterprise for the past 40 years. And he was part of the scheme, as was Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not a defendant, nor are any individuals, only his corporation. So the world is closing in on him. He's fighting back, no surprise. We'll see where all this goes, as you know, or as we get it. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.